Welcome once again to the program Transforming Lives One at a Time. This program is aired every Saturday afternoon at 5:30. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, Transforming Lives One at a Time. On this program, we delve into real issues that affect real persons on a daily basis. Well, today we're going to be discussing challenges faced by children with disabilities and possible solutions. My guest today is team lead at the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, Department of Child and Family Reintegration Services, Tobago, Nicola Carrington. Ms. Carrington graduated with Masters in Social Work. She has over 14 years experience in social services and has a passion for helping persons in vulnerable positions. Her interest in disability peaked in 2014 as she keenly observed challenges faced by parents of children with disabilities. Ms. Carrington, welcome to Transforming Lives One at a Time. Very happy to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, let's get into it one time. I know that it is not an easy feat dealing with a child or children with a disability or who is differently abled, as we now refer to it. Firstly, when we say a child has a disability, what does that really mean?
So that is really a broad spectrum that we're talking about. But ideally, we are talking about children who they're experiencing any challenge that restricts their involvement and their participation in society. So that may be mental, that may be physical, and really and truly it means that society has not really put things in place to ensure that this child is able to fit in and adjust. So, they make what can be a disability disabling and disables that person's involvement in society.
Okay. So what kind of challenges do families of children with disabilities commonly face, and just how can they be supported?
Right. So families who are providing for children with disabilities experience a myriad of challenges. So the first thing that could come to mind is stress, right?
Okay.
Mental burnout. So these families are isolated. These families are left out of many of the social spaces. So we have mothers who are caring for children. Some of them have to leave employment, so that brings on another challenge, that is financial challenge.
Yes.
Then we have a lack of support. Sometimes we see a breakdown within the family because this is something that the family never set out to experience.
Right.
And then we have little disagreements amongst each other as to how they go about facing these different, challenges that come along with each day. So social support, financial support, they lack those things, and it sort of helps to isolate them and keep them on the outskirts of society.
Right.
And one way that we can help, and I'm talking about not just you and I, where we're talking about the entire society, is by supporting. So many of these families, they believe that, they're experiencing this thing on their own. So they're off in isolation and they do not have any support. So many a times you will have mothers crying themselves to sleep because they don't know what to do. The child is displaying a behavior and they are at the point where they do not know how to treat with that behavior. And usually it stems from one child will be, behaving a certain way, and then the entire family is affected. So support is something that the family can receive that will help them to get through these trying times. Also financial support.
Yes.
At the end of the day, bread has to be bought,
right.
And the mother has to get the money from somewhere. Mommy and daddy has to get the money from somewhere to purchase the items. So I know families receive the disability grant for children from social welfare, and that's like an amount of 2,000 per
monthly.
child. Yes, monthly per child. So that is something that can help some families. A lot of families may not reach out to access the disability grant, and that's something that we will explore a little further.
Yes.
Because they may be feeling shame and
Yes.
different things like that. Sometimes some believe that the process is so long.
Wow.
So they do not engage the necessary persons to access that financial support. Sometimes counseling is something that a family raising a child with disabilities can benefit from. So they can learn different techniques, different tools, different activities that they can engage in to help to address the different behavioral challenges that the children may be displaying.
Wow. Well, I'm listening to you, and what I'm hearing is that this takes a kind of emotional I'm just losing my words there. I'm having a senior moment. What's wrong? Yes, an emotional tone. It's like a turmoil that is taking place. So you're now trying to deal with this situation as it relates to this child or these children, and then you speak about the financial aspect. It seems to me, and it sounds to me, that this is an entire job by itself.
So when it comes to putting things in place for a child with a disability, it can be very costly. So based on the disability, whether it is, say, that child will need a wheelchair, the wheelchair has to change over time because the child is growing.
Yes, correct.
And then the mom has to either have a more flexible job where she's able to leave at certain times.
Wow.
And we all know that adds up. They take out that money from the salary. So, or some have to remain at home because of the level of care that they have to provide for their children. And then we see situations where it is a lot, where sometimes the home moves from a 2-income household to a 1-income household because of the emotional stress that it bears on both partners. So persons start bickering, they start quarreling because it affects the parenting style. One parent may believe that, hey, you are letting this child get away with murder because they don't understand that this is part of the package that comes along with, say, ADHD or autism or some of those invisible disabilities. Right. So it creates a lot of friction sometimes in marriages, and we usually urge for families, the entire family, to seek counseling and to get that advice so that they can work through the situation. Right,
and I'm also thinking that the level of support that is needed, even relatives, the extended family, this is where the extended family would be able to come in and be able to contribute to be able to bring some kind of ease to the parents who would be facing this on a daily basis.
Yes, and that is critical. You see, support from the family, it has a big impact on the outcome of the parents.
Yes.
So when a mother needs to rest, when she needs to take a little 5 minutes, you can have a grandmother, auntie, someone to step in. Yes, to just stepping in the gap to ensure that the mother is able to take care of herself mentally, and she's equipped to take that baton and run with it. And then if you get the buy-in from the entire family, you have them being more understanding to the needs of the child, because each child is individual, is unique.
Of course.
What one grandchild may like, the other grandchild may not like it, and many a times it really calls for us to share that knowledge amongst the entire family. So the grandmother knows that, hey, my grandchild has this, was diagnosed with this, and these are some of the things that I can do to ensure that I maintain a relationship with this grandchild, because it's not going to be as easy as Johnny comes, Johnny sees me, Johnny hugs me.
Right.
And whereas Jack, it's completely different. Jack will enter the room, Jack sees you, Jack says good day, and then Jack is in a corner by himself.
Yes. Wow. Ms. Carrington, it has been proven that when persons come together for a common cause, that usually we get results. What role do peer support groups or networks play in helping families navigate their journey?
So they play a great role. So persons are able to sit in one space and they no longer feel isolated.
Okay.
They are in a space that persons are experiencing the same thing that they are experiencing. So all of a sudden, quote unquote, the mask has to fall, and they feel at ease and they're comforted knowing that, hey, I'm in a room of persons who are experiencing just what I'm experiencing. So when I say today was a day,
yes,
Mommy X and Mommy Z knows exactly what they are talking about. So that really helps out the persons when they join those groups. Also, they may have family persons in those groups that will introduce them to different services.
Okay.
So whereas this individual may not have access to this service because they don't know, they're so overwhelmed at home, taking care of the home and the children and all of that, they may not be aware of all of the services. But when you join a peer group, you are engaging with different persons from different socioeconomic status in life, you know.
Yes.
So basically, the thing about disability is this. It's not just one socioeconomic group that will be affected by disability. You have different persons from different groups. So you may have a doctor, you have a lawyer, you have a stay-at-home mom, you have different persons who are interacting in this peer group.
Yes.
So you are able to now access different resources, different levels of information that you may not have been privy to. And that is something that will help mothers as they try to, navigate this role that they never really asked for, but it's something that they were gifted with. I like to say gifted with. I like to put a positive thing on things.
Understood.
So when they're exposed to all of that new information, they are now equipped to go forth and say, hey, I'm observing this, and I spoke to Auntie in the group and she mentioned I could do this instead of doing that.
Yes.
Or so it's a great opportunity for parents to join those peer groups and to connect to different resources and to develop and harness skills that society would have barred them from developing otherwise.
Right. I want to get back to the emotional part because a child is born. We have great expectations, and sometimes a child is born with disabilities, and now you have to, as it were, retrain your mind in terms of what you were expecting. You also spoke about persons failing to come out to ask for help because of embarrassment. Let us talk a little bit about that in terms of that emotional aspect and how can they get over that hurdle. Listen, God has blessed me with this child. We have some challenges, but we will make it. We have to accept it. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so when you bring a child into this world, it is really a unique experience for each person. Some persons, they come out of the hospital, they're so relieved, they're going to start this journey, they're planning everything that they want to do.
Yes.
Then my child will be involved in football, my child will be involved in basketball, all of these things. And along the way, as you start to look at the development of your child, you may observe that, hey, my child is not developing at the pace that they should be.
Right.
Or I'm observing this behavior or that behavior. And parents go through, when you discover that your child would have been diagnosed with some sort of disability, they go through some periods of grieving.
Yes.
Because you are grieving the loss of what you perceived your parents in would be, what you perceived your child would be. If you were seeing yourself as a soccer mom, you have to say goodbye to those thoughts. If you saw yourself as being, that mom with a minivan driving your child around to do different things.
Yes.
If your child has a physical impairment, then you have to come to terms with that to say that, okay. But the thing about it is, it's not just staying there. After you grieve, you accept.
Yes.
What the hand that you would have been dealt in life, but then it's learning new behaviors to overcome. It's not an easy transition from acceptance to overcoming everything. So ideally, persons are stuck in that process of grief for a very long time.
Yes.
So you may highlight certain things to this parent. Hey, I'm observing this in your child. And they say, no, my child is normal.
Denial?
Yes, denial. And it is very interesting to work with parents in this space because it's a challenge. The main thing that we say, social work, we have this saying, I cannot help you until you're willing to accept the help.
Right, yes.
And we're in that state with parents who, their child clearly needs the intervention.
Yes.
We clearly need to start remedial work. We definitely have to start to look at whether it's play therapy at the Child and Adolescent Center, whether it's counseling at the Division of Health. We clearly have to start beginning these steps, but because the parent is at the place where they have not accepted that this is taking place, this is happening to my child, more than likely intervention is halted. So there's no way to move forward in that case. And that can be a lot. It's a lot for the therapist, it's a lot for the parents, because many times they are existing in environments that are not too welcoming.
Right.
So they have persons telling them things like, oh, your child is this way and that way because you did this.
Right.
Or you did not do that. And there's this level of shame and this burden that the parents hold on to. So many times they withdraw. Because if you're going to enter a space and every time you enter that space, someone is telling you, your child is this way because you did this.
You failed.
Right. And then it's not even, sometimes you go to church. I really don't want to bring up this from this angle, but sometimes you go to church and sometimes there are persons who don't understand the different disabilities, and some persons will say, well, your child is this way because God is punishing you for something that you would have done. So there are lots of misconceptions about disability that sort of helps to keep the parents trapped in this emotional state. And one thing I know for sure is to dispelling these misconceptions. That is the first step towards providing support to parents to get them out of that emotional state. So the misconceptions, they say stuff like sticks and stones may break my bones, but words they cannot heal me. And that is not true. That is not true.
Words are very powerful.
They are very powerful. And many parents, they sit with those words and they have no one to turn to. So they sit and they themselves may experience mental health challenges. And when we're talking about depression, we're talking about anxiety, because many times they are sitting with their child and say, okay, today we have to go here. We have to go to the market, or we need to go to this space. But now they know that they do not have support in those spaces. So they're thinking, hey, when I take my child out to this space, I am praying that there's no meltdown. Because I know everyone is going to be looking at me and everyone is going to be whispering and everyone is going to be talking. And many times, to avoid all of that, they would keep the child at home.
So you will hide the children.
They hide the children
for fear of what society, because sometimes as a society we can be very cruel.
Yes.
We don't have that level of understanding. We don't have that empathy to be able to put yourself in that person's position, and that person is already dealing with so much.
Yes.
Depression is coming in, failure, unforgiveness. Maybe if I did this would not have happened. Maybe God is punishing me. Why God? And so many questions. And I think as a society, I will say it and I will say it again, we have to learn to care more.
Yes.
We have to learn to love more. We have to learn to reach out to persons more. We may be doing it, but we have to do better. Because at the end of the day, persons are depending on us. They may be in a low place, and just one little word of encouragement can just make the difference.
Yes, it can.
Definitely. Well, at this time we're going to take our first break, and we will be right back. You are viewing Transforming Lives One at a Time.
If you're wondering where to find top-tier quality tiles and products to refurbish or renovate your wall, floor or pool, well, your worry is over. Come to D-Cells Tile and Ceiling Center, Store Bay Local Road, opposite the Bonnecourt Primary School, Tobago, where you will find porcelain, mosaic, and ceramic tiles of the highest quality guaranteed. D-Cells Tile and Ceiling Center also stocks thinset, grout, tile cutters, and yes, windows. Plus, a friendly smile and service that's second to none awaits you. So forget the hassle and get all the quality tiles you need right here in Tobago at D-Cells Tile and Ceiling Center. Call us today at 460-8802, 639-8281. Opens Monday to Saturday from 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the program, Transforming Lives One at a Time. We are speaking about children with disabilities and possible solutions. Ms. Carrington, let's continue the conversation. As a society and as a people, we always have to correct individuals about certain misconceptions they may have, certain mindsets on countless issues and situations. But we want to clear the air today as it relates to this subject. What are the most common misconceptions about children with disabilities, and how can we address them going forward?
Okay. So one of the most common misconceptions is that they cannot lead a fulfilling life.
Okay.
So they are judged and treated, yes, they are differently able, but they are treated so different that, you persons see them as person who, hey, they're just there, they're just existing, and they cannot contribute meaningfully to society.
Okay.
And that is one of the biggest misconceptions, because as we rightfully said, they're differently able, meaning they have gifts, they have talents, and they will excel in different environments. So whereas the schooling system is tailored towards one type of learning, mainly there are children who would excel, say, in a classroom that is very active, it's outdoor,
Yes.
they're being able to engage with environment and different things like that. There are children who they're excellent at drawing, arts.
Yes.
They can sculpt. They are good. They're very artistic. They're persons who they're good in mathematics, and they can develop programs. Yes, so STEM classes will be classes that they will excel in. So it's more about, that is one of the main things, because they see someone in a wheelchair and they think like, hey,
Your life is over.
yeah, what more can you, they have not had a conversation with this person. They do not understand that, hey, this person could be a lead programmer. They sit and they can create games. They can do so many things on the computer. So it's just removing that bias, that inherent bias that we have when we see persons who are differently able. Right. And we should allow ourselves to be open to questioning and to going a little step further, to getting to know the person, rather than just seeing the apparatus, say, of a wheelchair, or seeing a hearing aid, or seeing something like that, and judging the individual, thinking that, hey, they cannot contribute to society. So one step that we can take is be more empathetic, be more understanding. Take that first step to, ask a question instead of judging. We lean forward and we say, hi,
Have a conversation.
Have a conversation, yes.
And we'll be amazed, because as we rightfully said before, this misconception, and sometimes you have this stigma. So you look at somebody probably who is blind, or somebody who who is hearing impaired.
Yes.
Or on a wheelchair, and in your mind, you're already saying, wow, I just feel so sad, I just feel so sorry for this person. But that individual is living their best life.
Yes.
And they are fulfilling their purpose, which they have been called to do. And many of us, we may not be in a wheelchair. We have our legs, the articulation of our limbs, everything is in order.
Yes.
And we are not accomplishing as much as this blind person is accomplishing, because of the mindset.
Yes, and I like to say perception is reality.
Yes.
Perception is reality. We have a lot of persons, hey, they're walking around, as you said, they're able-bodied, and they are still stuck.
Right.
Because their perception of reality is something that it doesn't quite fit. They perceive themselves to be, they should be further than they are, or they sit on that, you know, they're in that grieving process, not accepting life for, you know, what it is and where they are. So, and then there are persons who would say, hey, I did not accomplish this, but I accomplished X, Y, Z, and they have this positive outlook on life that will allow them to, you know, take steps forward, you know. And I would like to believe that it's that same positive view on things that we would use when we're looking at persons with disabilities or children with disabilities. It's not, they are not, as one person would have said, I have a disability, but I'm not disabled. Right. In that, I am only restricted because society has not equipped me with things to ensure that I excel.
Understood.
So I have a disability, therefore I may require additional assistance. I may need an assistive device. I may need help from someone else to read something for me. I may need help from another person to, you know, interface on my behalf. But I am not disabled. I have a disability. And once society can put the resources in place, equip me with the necessary things that I would need to get the job done, then that those individuals they can contribute to society.
And significantly. Significantly. Well, here on Transforming Lives One at a Time, we seek to bring families and communities together, working towards finding solutions for the problems and the issues that we would face every single day. The question is, how can communities and organizations amplify the voices of children with disabilities and that of their parents and families?
Well, your show, excellent show, I must say, and this is one of those steps that we can utilize. Have persons who are experiencing different levels of disability, that they can be a part of your program. They can come in and they can share their experiences for themselves. We can have community caravans. We can have persons going about, you know, just educating persons about what is disability, what is expected, and how we can now partner with persons with disabilities to help them to, you know, speak up and to talk about how life is, you know, how they're experiencing different things in life. So in the community, also we can have spaces, safe spaces for persons with disabilities. Can you imagine going into a store and I'm restricted to a wheelchair and there's no ramp? You are telling me out front that you don't want me in your store.
I'm not catering for you.
I'm not catering for you. So I am now restricted of that opportunity of, you know, going into the store and pick, you know, selecting items for myself. So now you are placed in this dependent position where you also have to depend on someone to go in and, you know, pick up items for you and different things like that. So little things we can do when we put in the infrastructure in place to ensure that it's accessible for persons with disabilities. And then the playground, different areas set aside for children, you know, so that they can go, they can, you know, play with the sand, they can have their fun, because we all know play is the work of children. Of course. That is how they learn, that is how they grow. So they need to have safe spaces in the community that they can go without being bullied, without being picked on, and they're not stigmatized in those spaces.
Yes, definitely. Well, we cannot talk solutions and not address the issue of policies. How can policymakers ensure that the laws and the policies are inclusive and actively address the needs of children with disabilities?
So this is a touchy issue for me, like topic, because I know we do not have the set laws in place in TNT. So we would have signed off on certain documents from the UN, it was ratified. However, we have not implemented any national policy with respect to disability. Yes, we have equal opportunities and all of that for persons who are disabled to access employment, but we do not have a set policy that says, hey, this has to be done and this has to be done. You know, there's no set policy. I know there's a draft policy, but it has not been passed as yet. And it has been that way for a very long time. I can recall I would have been in secondary school, and it has not been passed as yet. And to me, that is a reflection of how the issue of disability is viewed on a wider context. So it's not something that persons really sit down and reflect about until it hits home.
I was just about to say that. Many times it's only when things hit home, then you recognize the needs and you recognize the cries of persons with disabilities and what they would have been lobbying for and continue to lobby for.
And even without that policy, we can implement the current policies that we have for children. All of the policies that we have in place for children, like children have a right to this, a right to that, it still is applicable to all children, children also with disabilities. So when you say children have a right to education,
across the board.
Why are we not seeing children with disabilities being fully included within the schooling system? There's an issue right now, a shortage of aides, teaching aides, different persons, special needs teachers. It's something that is really affecting us on the island right now, because we're seeing a growth of children with disabilities. In that, in the past, they would have children and persons would be like, oh, this one she had just had, or he just had just had. But now that persons are going and they're getting the diagnosis, they're observing that persons, some may be ADHD, some may be autistic, some have learning disabilities, and we do not have the proper mechanisms in place to ensure that these children can effectively function in the current schooling system. So that is something that we can actually work on. The current policy speaks about education for all. All children above the age of 5, they should be enrolled in school. And that is something that we should really push to ensure that it takes place. And even if they cannot be accommodated in the current schooling system, then something should be done to ensure that these children receive schooling.
Of course.
So maybe create a school.
Precisely.
Create a school.
Whatever we have to do, we have to ensure they are not left behind. No child should be left behind.
No child should be left behind. And I know they would say, yes, there's Happy Haven or there's school for the deaf. But those schools, you see, as I mentioned, it's a spectrum. You have mild, you might have moderate, you have severe. But there are children who may be mild, you know, their disability is not as severe as another person. It doesn't mean that they still don't have a right to be in a space that caters to their specific need.
Correct.
Because they need to be in a space where they can still access the same information that the other children are accessing to complete the curriculum, and they're able to complete exams, whether they're given extra time or they're provided with the special ed teachers, different things like that in that space, so that they're able to now function at the level, well, you know, to effectively complete their exams.
Right, understood. Well, this program, Transforming Lives, we are coming up with solutions. So as we find the solutions and as the program continues to go out, because we are youth, we are global, you know, and I'm even thinking in terms of the NGOs. NGOs can also get involved. The private sector can also get involved, because, you know, sometimes we think it's all about the government. I mean, yes, they have to make the policies, but once we have persons coming together, as I indicated earlier, once we come together for a common cause, we normally get results. So if we can speak to some of the NGOs, and I'm speaking right into the camera, if we could speak to some of the NGOs and we could speak to some of the persons in the private sector, this is something that we need. And I am certain that the various organizations that have already been established will definitely like a listening ear. They will be willing to have a meeting and say, okay, these are the needs. These are the things that we desire, because we want to find solutions for whatever is taking place in our communities. I want us to, in terms of what are some of the ways to include children with, you spoke earlier about, with invisible disabilities?
Yes.
For example, autism, learning disabilities in discussions and advocacy.
So, education. So, one main thing that we have to do is to educate the population on the different types of disabilities. So a lot of persons, when they hear disability, they think wheelchair, they think a cane because this person is blind, but they are not thinking that, hey, this person is experiencing something that restricts, you know, the way they interact with society. So it may be mental. Okay. It's something that is affecting them that we cannot see. So it may be experiencing a level of pain. The pain is so severe that it impacts on how they interact with different persons.
Right.
So somebody may have multiple sclerosis, you know, different things like that. So it's just for us to start educating society, letting them know that, hey, this is something that person's experience and this could have this result.
Right.
This child is autistic, therefore this child does not like to be touched.
Okay.
Do not see it as do not take it personal.
Of course.
This is something that this child is experiencing, and this child is in a space that they want to be comfortable and to open up.
Yes.
So what we can do as a society is to start with education, start with sharing information about the different types of disabilities. We can start creating, as I mentioned before, creating safe space for these persons.
Yes.
Because when someone with an invisible disability enters the room, you do not know that this person has a disability.
Well, that's why they call it invisible.
Yes, and the way in which persons respond to them when something happens. We have this sort of way where we look at persons and we're like,
yeah,
something.
Yeah, something is a little off there.
Yes, but because we go from a judgmental point of view, we do not empathize, and we do not try to understand what is going on with this individual. So we sort of say, okay, something wrong with this person, full stop, and they move on, and that's it. They don't really try to understand what's going on, what's taking place on a deeper level. So that lack of interest, I would say, in the human elements, that is the main core of who we are.
It's missing.
I know life is difficult. We're all stressed out, running up and down, getting this done, getting that done. So many times we forget to just pause in the moment,
breathe a bit,
and just experience things as they happen. So you're observing someone experiencing challenges in a space where, you know, they may be overwhelmed because so many things are happening at once. And sometimes we look at them, sometimes we want to assist, but then you never really know.
You take the side of caution.
And then they move on.
Right.
And where this person might be having a panic attack. This person might be so anxious that they're frozen to the spot, you know, because some children with autism, sometimes they become so fearful, you know, that they freeze up on the spot. Sometimes children with ADHD, sometimes they act out, and when they're emotionally dysregulated, meaning that their emotion is just moving from one state to another, sometimes they can't control themselves. So sometimes you may see them jumping and trying to do different things just to ground themselves. And many times persons will look at them and like, what is going on with this child?
And sometimes judge the parent. You're not training your child.
Yes, and unfortunately, some persons use a very harsh way. Like some parents, they may use physical disciplining. So they may use, you know, some persons say spare the rod and spoil the child. And to me, that is very, you know, they may pull out a whip and threaten the child, or they may, you know, you jumping up and down too much.
Right.
I can't take it, you know. So many a times it is education, because if the parents are aware that, hey, the child is overstimulated, this space is either it's the lighting, it's either the songs they're hearing,
Right.
it's either the smell.
Yes, some
Something,
trigger.
yes, something would have triggered this behavior, and at this point you go into de-escalation mode where, hey, you're trying to remove the different things that can make the situation worse.
Right. So what I'm hearing is education is key.
Yes.
Because once we are educated on the various challenges that these children face, we can now be in a better position to empathize. Because remember, if we are not aware as to the things behind the scenes that only probably the parents or those working in the various NGOs would be privy to the information. Remember, the average person would just look at a child and come up with their own. They will analyze a child for themselves, not recognizing that there is a deeper issue. So education. So I am now thinking that maybe we need to have a robust educational drive to get persons aware as to what these disabilities entail, the behavioral patterns, what to expect, so that persons would now become more empathetic. They can now be in a better position to be a little kinder, as opposed to being harsh when something of this nature occurs. But at this time, we're going to take another break. Oh, I tell you, the time is running quickly. But we're going to take another break, and we will be right back. You are stay with us.
If you're wondering where to find top-tier quality tiles and products to refurbish or renovate your wall, floor or pool, well, your worry is over. Come to D-Cell's Tile and Ceiling Center, Tobago Local Road, opposite the Bonnecourt Primary School, Tobago, where you will find porcelain, mosaic and ceramic tiles of the highest quality guaranteed. D-Cell's Tile and Ceiling Center also stocks thinset, grout, tile cutters and yes, windows. Plus a friendly smile and service that's second to none awaits you. So forget the hassle and get all the quality tiles you need right here in Tobago at D-Cell's Tile and Ceiling Center. Call us today at 460-8802, 639-8281. Opens Monday to Saturday from 9 a.m.
Welcome back, viewers. We are talking about children with disabilities and possible solutions. Well, let's shift gears a bit, Ms. Carrington, to the education system. What role do schools play in teaching acceptance and inclusion to children from a young and tender age? Principal, teachers, guidance counselors.
Yes. So, ideally, schools are the spaces that first pick up on issues where a child may be experiencing a disability, because they enter school from the age of 3, and they're away from the parents, and the teachers spend quite a good amount of time with the children. So school is one of the places that they first pick up on the challenges that the child may be experiencing.
Right.
So one thing that the teachers in the school can do is to, as we keep mentioning empathy, that is something that I believe that teachers must have in this situation.
Yes.
Because when the children come into your space, they see you now as a second mother figure.
Course,
so they are opening up to you.
Yes.
They are basically, you are their second mommy. So you would be privy to certain things that the average other person would not be able to see. Yes. So in viewing the children, you see them with empathy, you see them with love still. Yes, it's not your child, but you have a level of love.
And caring. And it's natural with teachers.
And once you have that, when you're interacting with the children, you will pick up on certain things.
Yes.
And in your role as a teacher, yes, you observe that, hey, X doesn't like it this way, or T doesn't like things this way. Your role is to, report everything that you observe that may not be in alignment to where this child should be developmentally.
Right.
So yes, the parent may or may not accept the information, but at least you know that you would have done your part in highlighting it to the parents.
Definitely.
And of course you're not going to tell the parents in this dehumanizing way.
Of course, have a private meeting.
Have a private meeting, have a sit down with the parent and let them know, hey, I observe this and I observe that. You know?
Yes.
Can we work on, have different methods that we want to try first, and then encourage parents to, take the child to get the diagnosis, to let them know that the school, you are there to support, the school is supportive.
Right.
And that's another thing. The schools, because they have a curriculum to complete.
Yeah. Pace.
It is going at a pace. So yes, children who with the learning disabilities, they will be left behind.
Understood.
Because the teacher, what they would say is that they're there to teach, they're not there to be behavioral aids to the students.
Right.
So many times when the child is being very disruptive in the class, it's either they're removed from the setting and the teacher continues with their work.
But there's a deeper issue many times.
And it's to highlight the issue to the parents, highlight the issues to the principal.
Right.
Because many times you observe it in one child, and I'm certain you're going to observe it in another child in the upcoming years. So it's to not just skip over it and just say, well, I just can't wait for this child to leave my class. No.
Right. Yeah.
It's we're putting systems in place.
Of course.
And we're going to start with a reporting system where we report different things that we observe and recommendations.
Yes.
As a teacher, okay, I recommend this, you're recommending persons, referring them to the different centers for the necessary assessment, because the parents, some of them, they may not know they need to go into these different spaces and to access the information from the psychiatrist,
right? Yes,
or the child psychologist, and different persons who can work with their children to get them to, a level where, hey, they can now sit in a classroom and absorb the information.
Yes, but what it also says to me is that, and it should say to all of us, is that we need greater partnerships between our parents and the teachers, the principals. Many times you come, you have a child go into the school, and you come, you drop the child off, and that's the end of it. But sometimes you need to just check in.
Yes.
Miss, I wanted to find out how is my child doing? Are they interacting how they should? How is their general behavioral patterns and stuff like that? Because they leave from the home, and this, as you said, is like a second mommy or a second daddy that comes. So you're looking for these teachers to be looking out for your child. So it's in the parents' best interest to have a nice cordial relationship with the teachers. Don't go with a hostile mentality and that kind, but have that because it is all for the best interest of your child.
Yes.
As we venture on this journey we call life, we often find at times that when persons, whether children or adults, have a disability, or is someone somehow differently able, that some persons tend to look at them differently, treat them very differently, treat them in a certain way that is not beneficial to the individual nor society. And I am of the firm belief that we should treat others how we would like to be treated if we were in that situation. So the question is, how can we foster a culture of acceptance and respect for differences among children and adults?
So firstly, we have to lead with love. At the baseline of everything, we are human beings. We're human beings, and we're here to love each other, to respect each other. And that is the premise on which we can add the other things.
Right.
If we don't love each other, we don't respect each other, then we have very little foundation to add anything else onto.
Correct.
So we begin with that premise, we love each other, we respect each other.
Yes.
And when we talk about love, it's just a general love for, us
Humanity.
as humanity,
Yes.
And when we can establish that, now we can say, hey, as you mentioned, I don't want somebody to do something to me that
Yes.
If I don't want it for myself, I don't want it for somebody else.
Correct.
That is what I usually say. I don't want it for me, I don't want it for my son.
Yes.
So I don't want it for someone else's son.
Right.
So we tend to get this mindset where we're seeing things outside of ourselves. in that is their problem,
Yeah.
or that is their problem. This is not my problem.
Right.
You know, and we are very myopic. We kind of look at things
Yes.
you know, this is me and my family and we are doing this. But we fail to realize that, hey, we are living in a very small society.
Of course.
We may not have to deal with the person directly, but guess what? Your child goes to school.
That's right.
Your child is interacting with this other child in the classroom.
Yes.
Or maybe your child is in class with the sibling of that person, and you know, different things like that. So we need to understand that, hey, as a society, we just need to start being kinder to each other, you know, start putting things in, like when you see somebody struggling, yes, we may not always be able to assist financially.
Right.
But
a kind word.
Kind word, you know, I observe that you're struggling, you know, do you need any help to lift groceries, different things like that.
Course.
Many times I would observe persons looking at the elderly just struggling with grocery, and they walk past them straight, and I'm like,
how?
Okay.
How?
So it's, to me, it's the little things that we do, the little things, not so much the big things. The policies could change.
Yes.
So many things could change, but you see the little things in how we treat each other on a day-to-day basis, and how we view each other, the value that we place on each other. That is the thing that would make the biggest difference.
Yes.
Because you could have a great policy, but it may never be implemented because why? We don't value persons with disabilities, and then we never implement the policies.
Right.
So for me, it's about working on the values and the principles that we have in ourselves as human beings to ensure that whatever comes into play, whether it is policy based, whether it is a school, whether it is a park, we still have to have some level of scruple and some principles, because we could create safe spaces, but then we have persons who are not, they don't believe that these persons are entitled to these safe spaces, and then they go in and, you know, do different things to these spaces. So it's on a deeper level, we need to reach within ourselves and start working on how we value persons and the people around us.
Yes.
Yes.
Well said, well said. As we begin to wrap up the program for today, what would you say to parents, educators, and policymakers about creating a better environment for our children who are differently abled?
I would like for everyone to know that, hey, we cannot give up. We cannot give up until there's equity. We cannot give up because we have to be the voice. We have to be the voice of the voiceless.
Yes, correct.
And we have to always include them in everything as we go along, because nothing for us without us. Basically, we have to include persons with disabilities in the different activities to champion their cause. So as we go through our daily lives, we basically have to remember that, hey, we can stand in the gap for these persons, and we can also bring them along on this journey, and we can learn from them, and they can be a part of this whole, what you call a resistance, because we're trying to change the status quo.
Yes, of course.
We're trying to change the status quo. We're trying to ensure that no one is left behind.
Right.
So the teachers, the parents, we all need to work together. And we all need to understand that, hey, it's not about this group being against that group.
Yes.
We are all coming together for a common
cause.
Common cause, yes.
Common cause.
And we have to work together and put the children first.
Yes. What is one key takeaway you would like the audience to remember about children with disabilities and inclusion?
So, anyone can be an advocate. I want persons to understand that anyone can be an advocate for children with disabilities. We sit and we think that this is only for persons who have children, this is only for persons who have children with disabilities, this is only for teachers, this is only for, you know, certain persons. But no, anyone can be an advocate, and anyone can, you know, stand up and be a voice. And also we want persons to know that children and persons with disabilities can contribute to society.
Yes.
they are not to be left behind, and they can contribute, and they have a lot to offer.
Yes.
Once you sit, as we said, have a chat with them and see where they are, and treat them as whole human beings, not a piece of human being, not a, treat them as full human beings, with all the rights that they're supposed to have as human beings.
Yes, definitely. Well, I want to thank my guest today, Ms. Nicola Carrington, for taking us into the world of children who are differently abled and what families experience on a daily basis. And I know we could have gone on and on, but yes. I'm certainly going to bring you back for part 2. I trust that the program has impacted your lives today. And of course, the policymakers that are listening, you will have a much clearer understanding as to what these families face. I want to encourage you that if you have children with disabilities, that you would reach out to the various organizations. There is help. I always say, once there is a life, there is hope and there is help. So you can get that support, that extra help that you need. And there are various NGOs that I'm certain will be willing to contribute in whatever way they can to make your life better. Well, folks, that's the program for today. You can subscribe on my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, Transforming Lives One at a Time. The program is aired every Saturday at 5:30. And of course, I'm your host, Dianne, and I always leave you with the definition of transformation, which is an internal shift that brings us into alignment with our fullest potential. Hey, we've got this. Thank you for viewing. See you next program.